Hello everyone, today I'm gonna explain you server-side routing versus client-side routing. Firstly, we will have a look what is routing. Routing refers to how an applicant's endpoints respond to client requests. As you know, we have some links in our web applications or websites, and when we click on that specific links, we are requesting something, and then we are getting some answers, and we are directed to some paths according to our clicks on the links. And this is all about routing. Let's say we have a navbar, and in the navbar we have a home menu and also settings. When we click on settings, we will go to the endpoint of settings, and this is about routing, and we are getting the setting page. And then when we click on profile under the setting page, we will direct it to the profile page. So what are the differences between server-side routing versus client-side routing? Let's say we have an anchor tag as a link in our applications like this, and when we click on that specific link, what happens if we have a server-side routing? First of all, the browser detects that we click on an anchor element, so we will be performing something about routing. And then the browser makes an HTTP GET request to the server, and then server sends back us a whole file, usually a HTML file, as a response, and the browser renders that file, that new file, and we see that page. But in server side we are getting a whole file, and in client side, when we click on that link, the browser detects that we are clicking on a link on an anchored element, and our client side code, in our example, for example, Places app, React Router DOM, prevents HTTP GET request, and the routing library manually changes the URL in the address bar in here, and then we get some response according to that changes. Let's say a component change or a state change, and the browser only changes the states and component relevant to that route. And in our case, let's say React then processes the state changes on the screen. So what are the advantages and disadvantages between them? In server side, we are requesting the data we need. Let's say we have a whole big application, web application. There are lots of things and lots of links inside it. Let's say for example, news site or a newspaper site, and we are getting just the request that we need, that we want. If we want to see that specific page, we are just getting that file. We are just getting that data. And also single search engine optimization is much more easier in server-side routing. And in client-side routing, there are some advantages also. We are getting less data process because we are getting only the relevant components states and only relevant component data, except for the first time. Of course, for the first time we are getting the whole web application, and it takes longer time, and we will see in the disadvantage part. And we can apply smooth transitions and animations in client side, so as to say single page applications and client side routing, like mobile applications. And what are the disadvantages of server sides? Every request results a full page refresher. So what does it mean? We are getting all the information, newly created document that we are getting from the server. So most of the time we don't need the changes in the header and footer, but in server side we are rendering header and footer all changes in the all changes, and because of that we are rendering a file from scratch in the browser. It takes longer time. So what are the disadvantages of client side? We are getting the whole website or web applications on the first request. So let's say we have a very big application and we created a client side routing. We are using, for example, React. We are getting everything about that application on the first place, and maybe we are getting the data that we won't need in our user experience. Let's say there are 100 links in the application, but maybe we will use just 2 or 3 links, but we are getting all relevant information and data for that 100 links. And it requires more setup work because it's a little bit complicated than server side, and even a library is required, and we are using that libraries like React, Angular or Vue.js or other stuffs. And client-side routing, it has less search engine optimization. And let's see what does all mean in action. By the way, we created a Places app which use both of them, both server-side routing and client-side routing, and let's see them. In our front-end folder and in our main component, file app.js, as you remember, we download a React router DOM, which is an npm package, and we take advantages of the specific functionalities methods inside that library, and we created our routes, as you see like here, according to client-side routing. And when we click on something in our application, we are immediately directed to that path. Let's say this is the React official page. When we click something on the page, we immediately direct to that path. But for the first time, this React page downloads a little bit longer than server sides because we get all the things inside that links. And as you see, when we click on a link, you don't see that refresher icon changes, because refresher icon is not changed in client-side routing because we are not getting a newly created file from the server. Let's see. As you see, refresher icon is not moving, but in server-side routing, for example, it's a new site, news website, and when we click on something, you see this icon is changing and turning across because we are sending a request to server and we are getting a whole HTML back. Let's say logs and other routes. You see the path is changing, and also we are getting a whole file from scratch. And in our backend part, we created server-side routing where in routes folder, and when we go to place routes folder, you see we are performing some methods on the route, and we are connecting to the database via server. And in here you see all the routes, and also we are handling our responses in our controllers, and you see there are requests that we are sending to the server, and server sends us some responses, and we are behaving according to that responses. And that's it, my friends. Have a nice day.